Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 1.4, making history, and it's time to launch our Duna return craft, or rather, our sort of rescue ship. Well, not quite rescue, it's more of a separate return craft. Just like the Apollo moon landings had two craft, they had the lander and, the return craft, so too are we going to do the same thing. We just happen to have sent them on separate rockets. Why not? So we're going to get started with that. Now, I'm not particularly high on funds at the moment. We're down to 275. This is going to cost us 77,000. And let's make sure we don't take all of our astronauts. No, we're going to take a pilot, Jeb. And that just makes absolutely sure that we're not going to have problems with losing access to the craft due to occlusions and stuff like that. So here we have Jeb on board. We're fine to launch, so let's get going. Off we go. We're going to start out quite slow, but that's going to quickly change just because we've got this mainsail, and these skippers are going to really convert that initial amount of fuel into speed fairly quickly once we get off the ground a little bit. There we go, we're coming up to 1.3 now. Shouldn't have much of an issue, and we're going to make sure we're centered, which we are. And as we get a little bit faster, we'll tip ourselves over a little bit before we get to 100. We want to fly this quite efficiently, and ideally we want this first stage, the one with our mainsail on it, to take us all the way into orbit. We won't have the boosters all the way into orbit, but we'll certainly have the main stage there. So we're going to start tilting over a little bit, and you'll see that these boosters, because, well, they're really separate rockets, they're not solid rocket boosters by any means, these liquid boosters are powering us up there, and they're depleting quite slowly. More importantly, that means they should get well away from the pad. I haven't got separator rocket motors on them at the moment. You could put them on there, but they should drop off without hitting anything on their way down, and they should be fairly fine there. So I'm just going to be fine with it, I think. And let's skip forward until we get to the separation, shall we? Okay, we're coming up on booster separation in 1 second. And they're going to drop straight backwards. They shouldn't collide with each other. They're quite heavy and therefore perhaps quite stable in the atmosphere. Oh wait, oh, they're crossing over each other. No, they're still fine. Not that we care anymore. I don't actually have stage recovery on this, I think. I may do, but I don't think I do. So it's not really worthwhile us trying to recover those. Do we have stage recovery? No, because otherwise it will be spamming this with lots of different things. Okay. Stage recovery is, if you don't know what it is, it's a mod that basically lets us recover lower stages. Parachutes, you can, it's almost like a time advance and time, how best to put it? It's almost like a save system. So we take a save of this craft, we jump to those, try to land them, i.e. SpaceX style, and then we jump forwards back in time, if you like, to this point, and then you sort of make fiction that they are landed perfectly, and this one continues. So we're heading up towards 100. Yeah, let's cut off there. We've got 34 seconds of fuel remaining. And I left that a little bit long. Probably should have stopped around 80, but let's just add a maneuver and circularize. So we're going to need 38 seconds of fuel. We've got 34 seconds of fuel, which is actually pretty nice. It's pretty close to what we actually need, which means that when this runs out of fuel, I would hope that it's still low enough in periapsis that it will drop back into the atmosphere and burn up, because we don't want to have to leave, debris in orbit all over the place. So I'm just holding down full yaw to get us close to that marker, and we can then circularize. And we're already out of the atmosphere, so we can lose this top section. That has that given us more delta V? Was it 805? Was it 805 before? Maybe some of you can comment. But in any case, it's 805 now, and we need 884. That last 84, that last 79, I should say, should be fairly useful for us, but I'm not sure whether it's going to take us all the way out of the atmosphere, and I don't want it to, ideally. So there we go, just lining up. We are at the atmosphere, so we can press 1, and out will come you'll see them just come out there, popping out, our solar panels. And then we can just fast forward a little bit until we get closer. We're going to want exactly halfway there, so it's going to be 19 seconds or something like that. Yeah, 4 seconds to go. It's approaching our marker. So let's just go and put ourselves on that marker. Shouldn't matter too much where we are at the moment. A little bit of shake just because of how everything's connected. I should have put more struts in maybe, but we should be okay. And then we just want to burn up for 20 seconds. So that is rapidly bringing our periapsis up. And let's stay on the marker, shall we? At least try. It's wobbling a little bit too much. Alright, there we go. And under 200, let's see what our periapsis is like. I will stop it if we're going to come out of the atmosphere, because I do just want to have this drop back in. So, there it is. So 10,000, that will be perfect. And this can continue. Just out of the atmosphere, that will do fine. So 100 by 80, no problem whatsoever. And we have, you know, 1,700 meters per second of fuel remaining. Okay, so that means we can now transfer to another planet. So, well, let's see if we can do that simply. Again, we're going to be going to Duna. I've already set up, if you see Viking 2 there, I've already set up a different Viking craft to go ahead of this one. It's a couple of weeks ahead of this one, just like we did with our original. And that will mean we can at least have another satellite at the other end. Yeah, hopefully. As long as I don't disable it manually, like I did last time by using up all the power. Right, so we are now ready. So we're going to create a node to transfer to another planet at the next transfer window. Not at the next transfer window. How about as soon as possible? There we go, 29 minutes. So we can just drop back to here. Get ourselves roughly correct. And how much is it? 1,073. So we're going to have pretty much 650, 660, something like that. Delta V left on the other side. We could use that for braking, or we could attempt to brake using our engine as we did last time. But that is perfectly fine. I've lined up. At this point, I'm just going to press execute next node. And MechJeb is going to take over, the usual kind of thing, because it's fairly routine. And we'll see you once we get to that maneuver. And here MechJeb is adjusting itself to get back onto the maneuver node. You'll notice I've also got one of these large antennas, quite a significant one. That means we're not reliant upon the whole other satellite that's heading ahead of us, but you know, it's on there just in case, and we shouldn't need it obviously at the moment because we have someone on board. Makes it much easier when you're heading out to another planet, unless of course if you're using some kind of life support mod, in which case it's much harder. Trying to get enough snacks for poor Jeb is always a problem. It's usually not so much the food as the atmosphere, and that can cause issues very early in the game, but that's more for a realism overhaul kind of series, which I do have going, and I do mean to get back to. We just need to get to the lunar area on that one manned, and that will be good. So off this is going to go, and this should proceed without any problem whatsoever. Not much point showing you the rest of this because you've already seen this the last time we went out there. And here we go. We've just finished that maneuver, and as you'll see, our path is pretty much set now. We're on our way out, and we should get an encounter directly. But as before, if we want to do any corrections, it'd be just nice to do that over here at the descending node-ish, and let's just add a maneuver there. I'm not going to set anything up for it because we'll wait till we get there to actually do that. I just want to use that to be able to add an alarm right there, and that's for our Duna return. So Viking 2 craft will be ready for that maneuver in its path in 47 days, Duna return in 133 days. Now that we've done that, I did get a comment last episode from someone saying, hey, can you go and get your engineer to go and unwind those solar panels from the other craft? Well, why don't we try that? Let's go back to the Space Center. I'm not sure we have the Delta V to do it, though. I think I only had a couple of hundred Delta V after we got off Duna, so I'm not sure there's enough Delta V left to get some kind of encounter with that other satellite, but we can try. So we have, that's Minmus, Viking 1, Duna Lander, there we go. And we'll just head out to the Duna Lander and see if that's a doable thing or not. I'm guessing not. All right, so here we are. We have 303 meters per second of Delta V with 22.9 seconds essentially of thrust. And yeah, I mean, if you have a look at where this is, if we set this as target, I think we may have, do we have a maneuver planner for interception? Let's have a look, because this will plan, you know, as efficiently as it's probably possible to. I want to, no, it's not in there. I think it's probably one of the other helpers. Do we have it yet? If we don't, I'll have to fly it manually, but that's not really a problem. No. No, I don't think we do. Okay, so what can we do for that one? Well, we're going to want to really take the maneuver perhaps at the ascending node. Let's just add a maneuver there. And let's just see just how much delta V this takes. So 10s, here we go. So prograde. That is 100. So that's a third of our fuel gone. That is... Oh, that's 2/3 of our fuel just to raise the APO around here. So then if we just grab... Can we actually get sort of a single intercept with this? This will be interesting. If I drag this around a little bit, let's see what the interception is like at somewhere else. We're going to lose it because we're not at the ascending-descending node, but that we can pick it back up again. Yeah, you see, it's just spending so much more there to get close. And let's just drag this around a little bit more. Yeah, that's not close at all. So what happens if we just bring this back again? And because we're at that distance, there or thereabouts, if we then create a second node, maneuver node that is, out here, and then node 2, we then spend on this one. So this is going to be another 41. I don't think we can do it, guys. I mean, I can try, but that we're going to end up with very, very little fuel left. And I don't think that's actually doable. If we had another maybe 100, maybe another 100, we could probably get to it. But 188 followed by another 100. And we've got 303 already. If I just increase that again, we might be able to. Let me have a fiddle with it for a couple of seconds off camera and see if there's any way to do it. If not, you know, at least I tried. Well, I really did try. The home and transfer to target is probably the best one for the maneuver planner. With that, even with that, it's just too complicated, particularly when the intercept will be so fast between the two different things, because we just don't have the delta V to get to a smaller orbit and then intercept. So if I did a plane change, first of all, that consumes, you know, a good 71 meters per second just to match planes. Yes, normally you could do that halfway out, etc., but we just don't have the I don't think we have the delta V to, or really the second chance, if you like, to try that halfway out. But then we go on to a second node, and the second node will push our orbit out, and we'll get an intercept around 11 kilometers ish, but around 129 meters per second, and that's really, really fast, and not something we can just do by jumping out and catching up with it, I don't think. In any case, then we can try using up the rest of our fuel, which is like the last, if you have a look, the last 30 or so, and that gets us to a separation of 4.5 kilometers. But again, that relative speed is still 100 meters per second. I don't want to try doing the Sandra Bullock gravity thing of jumping between one craft and another at orbital speeds. That said, it's not terribly fast, but it's still fast enough to make that really unreliable. So, and also, we'd run out of fuel, and then our orbit would end up just like this, and we'd have to try and intercept with another craft. So that's a non-starter, unfortunately. This relatively circular orbit of 145, 153 makes it more straightforward for a craft incoming to intercept our little lander craft. So, unfortunately, this one's dead. But another one's coming in. So we're now on our Viking 2 craft, which is getting to Duna much faster. And we're now at the maneuver node, so we need to have a look at where this is going to come in. We're quite far away from it still. That's 41 million kilometers. So, yeah, let's actually just... Oh, what have we got? 563. We've got plenty of delta V, so we shouldn't have to worry about this too much. There we go. Let's just bring radial in a little bit. And then prograde. Yeah, it's going to be much too sensitive. There we go. We're going to have to bring that up. Maybe some radial. Yeah. So in it comes. And we need to avoid Ike, of course. And of course, we get an encounter with Ike. You know. I don't want an encounter with Ike. Let's just bring the prograde around a little bit. We're going to have to be quite exact with this one. Just to make sure we don't... Ooh. Yeah, that's not good. Interesting. Am I actually going to have to fly past Ike? It's really annoying when that happens. We don't necessarily need a... We don't necessarily need an equatorial satellite here. It would be fine if it's polar. So we can get away with that a little bit. Oops, a bit too much. And let's bring it into polar orbit. Interesting. What height is that? 290. Well, we could, instead of braking, we could, yeah, we could do that. Do we have visibility back to Kerbin? Looks like we do. So we could come in over the top, and instead of aero capturing, we could just plan another maneuver here and then circularize. So that one will bring us into a mostly polar orbit. So that's another 500 meters per second for node 2, and node 1 is 600. So that's 1100. That will be most of that first stage, and that'll be quite neat if we end up with that stage used up as we arrive in orbit. So we can execute the next node, and this should happen. Let's just come so we can see our craft spinning around. Again, same craft as Viking 1, no changes. I don't think there are any changes anyway. No, I don't think I did. So that will all do quite well. As we approach, and it's 53 minutes away, but we'll jump forward. And in we come for the first burn. I've taken that second maneuver node out just because MechJeb sometimes has a few issues if you have 2 burns queued up, and because that circularization may well be a little bit different by the time we get there. So, yep, that is fine, or should be. Hopefully MechJeb's not going to have any issues with this. It should be cutting off any second. Are you going to be coming in? In comes our orbit. And how close are you going to get, MechJeb? You see, it's going to be a little bit further off, but I'm not too concerned. That is still okay by me. We'll just add a maneuver there. We will circularize for that maneuver, which will do us just fine. 500, that'll leave 100, 130 or so left if you want to do that. And that doesn't bring us too far away from where this craft is, so we should be able to already communicate back with Kerbin. And that, I'm going to add another alarm. Get into the habit of using Kerbal Alarm Clock. Really, really great mod, and everyone should be using it as far as I'm concerned. And you'll see even that is much, much faster than... Oh no, hang on, that's yeah, we're going to have to do Duna return. I was going to say, how is it getting to Mars even before Duna's getting to the middle point? No, Duna return is next. So we need to get over to there, jump over to the ship, and make some plans. Okay, so here we are plotting out our Duna return trajectory. Without making any change whatsoever, we're already going to get an encounter. But that encounter needs to be a little bit better. So let's just change our normal a little bit. Let's bring ourselves into the relevant system. And let's reduce our prograde, or go retrograde a little bit. And you'll see what we need to intercept is Viking 1 here. Now, there's no way I'm going to be able to plan to know where Viking 1 is going to be around there. And even the tilt, you know, we're probably going to have to intercept that anyway. So any delta V that we could save here would probably be of benefit. But you'll see it's just too far away at the moment to be able to adjust things very accurately. So we're going to bring things roughly to where we want them, which is potentially an aero capture, and that will make things a lot easier for us if we do that. So let's just bring it down and in. And remember, aero capture is down at like 40 kilometers or so, and again we're just too far out to be able to do this. And you'll see our trajectory is already just entirely different, but what we don't know is how different it'll be once we get there. So let's get ourselves towards, you know, some sort of equatorial situation as much as we possibly can. There we go. So let's That's the equator line there. So that's probably about as close as we can get it. It's going to get adjusted by the atmosphere anyway. So let's just say that's pretty much on perfect. And we don't even need MechJeb at this point. We can just use the built-in maneuver planner now because we have Jeb. Jeb's a good maneuver planner. And he's now 3-star pilot. So he has the maneuver planner pointer. And then it's a 1-second burn in 86 days. So again, just because it's pretty much a set that we'd actually finish that and we get it pretty much accurate, at least as accurate as MechJeb's going to get it anyway. We'll just set it up and MechJeb will execute the burn. And it's going to come around. We're going to get to this alarm, which will probably slow us down early. So let me just delete that alarm. And then MechJeb should slow itself down anyway, once we get to the right point. It's coming in now in a few more days. All right. And last few seconds, our time, as the time warp comes in, and we're ready to burn. So, very brief burn. Go MechJeb. And indeed, go Jeb. MechJeb. And let's see how close that gets us. Yeah, there it goes. So, that is 15. That's probably going to be too close, but we can actually wait until we are even around about, let's say, here. So if we add a maneuver, and again, we want to just add an alarm for that maneuver. And are we going to get there first? We are going to get there first. Interesting. Because Viking 2's maneuver is a whole 15 days later. All right, let's time warp. And here we are. We're now in Duna's sphere of influence. Right here, we're about to arrive. So we can modify this trajectory. So here from the trajectories mod is where we go. We'd basically come back out of the atmosphere, but then come back down again. So that's not quite what we want. Ideally what we want is something that takes us roughly to this kind of elevation, this kind of altitude. So get us ready for an orbit on the other side. So it should take us very, very little and probably in radial. There we go. So you'll see that takes us not a lot of time at all. And do we actually, or can we actually adjust the time of this to bring ourselves around a little bit closer? So, and again, this is just so little delta V. You can see I can't even adjust it to that point. So what's that Perry going to be like? It's about 17. We could just use our engines instead. That might be something worth trying, but so little. So yeah. Is there anything else we should adjust at this point? Will any of that do any good? Prograde gives us a bit more control. Yeah, so prograde will get us there. And normal? Is this going to have any effect other than pretty similar to prograde? I would imagine at this distance, yeah. We are going to have to worry about a plane change at some point, but that will be do fine. You can just see how little delta V this actually costs. Fine. So if we're going to do that, then we want to point at our maneuver node, and let's get going. So in we go with SAS. Point it here. I did get a good tip, by the way. I do keep forgetting it. You can do this. You can just change the engine's thrust limiter. So that gives you a really precise way of plotting a maneuver. So if we just bring that down to like 1%, then well, it shouldn't matter that we're 20 minutes away, but if we just, you'll see that makes hardly any difference, which is perfectly fine. So we're going to execute that next node. And to be honest, we may just do it manually. Why don't we do this one manually? Let's just decrease the speed. Abort the node execution, and we'll just fly in manually. A minute away is not much of a problem anyway. Doesn't much matter at this point. Yep, there's the alarm. And we will just use this to get ourselves right on target. Whoops. Maneuver node, please. Oh, have we already gone past it? Why is our maneuver node doing that? if I just close that off for a second. And yeah, I'll just fly it manually. Why not? We can just eyeball it. What do you mean this is insane? Jeb's a great pilot. And yeah, there we go. That will do us just fine. Of course, that will still get us to hit the planet on our second pass through the atmosphere. But other than that, we are fine. So we're going to point ourselves retrograde when we get a lot closer. And we will then use the heat resistance of our engine as we go through the atmosphere, remembering to bring in the solar panels. And here we come now towards Duna. We've still got our solar panels out. We may as well bring those in now. It'll take a little time to fold. There we go. And in they come, and into the shielding. I've also left this antenna on the, the space side of things. I can never remember if that's the zenith or the opposite. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's the zenith. Yeah. In any case, or the nadir is the other point. I think the nadir is pointed towards the planet. I'm sure someone will correct me if I've got those exactly wrong. But we're heading in towards the atmosphere. And that's at 50 kilometers. So now we're pretty much, well, stuck if anything goes wrong. And you'll see it's now saying, even though we've made no changes whatsoever, we will fly off. That won't be a problem because we can always, once we've passed the peri, we can adjust ourselves to bring ourselves into an orbit anyway. As long as it bleeds off a lot of the speed for us, yeah, it's not worth worrying about it too much other than that. Assuming we survive, of course. Jeb could be heading for a very, very hot time on a very cold planet. Okay, there we go. So we're in the atmosphere. At this point, we're caught. And we definitely don't want our parachutes to burn off. But we could always, I guess, rescue ourselves from Kerbin orbit without the parachutes. That's not much of an issue. And we're in physical time warp now. Here comes the heat. Yeah, that sticks out a little bit, doesn't it? In any case, let's hope it's fine. So we're still increasing in speed now. We still haven't got to a point where the atmosphere is thick enough to slow us down. But that should happen fairly soon. Yeah, it's just starting to turn now. And then this should increase the effect quite significantly. And Jeb is flying us on a retrograde orbit, so as long as he can maintain control all the way through this is never a given, we should slow down enough. Alright, there it goes. Lots of speed being bled off, and that will continue to increase. No sign of sideways issues of this going off the retrograde marker. No sign, or hopefully no sign, of that engine blowing up on us. Nope. And we're starting to increase out of the atmosphere now. So if we wanted to, we could try using this. You see, because our orbital path on the way around. We could. Have I still got this on? I do still have it on override. We perhaps don't want it on override anymore. But I could use this to boost. Well, bring our orbit down a little more if we wanted to. I think I want to wait a little bit till I'm a little bit higher in the atmosphere. Yeah, I don't necessarily want a flaming ball effect as I actually turn on my engines. Yeah, just a personal thing. And around it comes. It will get to this point, but we can probably, if I just do a little bit of thrust. There we go. So that's going to bring ourselves into an orbit, but it's far, far too high. So at this point now, I can bring in that orbit just by flying it manually. Again on the retrograde marker. And use very little delta V to do it, because we're doing it at the very closest point to the planet. Let's bring it all the way in. Let's increase our thrust. And you'll see trajectories is updating. I do like the trajectories mod. Lets you do things like try to land back on the space center when you're in orbit around Kerbin as well, which is another fun thing to try. Okay, so in it comes. And we'll get it close enough to the orbit of our, well, not Viking 1. We actually want to bring it all the way into our Duna lander, but I'm actually going to get up to Viking 1. Should we try and rescue it? Maybe not. I don't have an engineer on board. So I think what I'm going to do is now at this height, I want to wait until I'm out here and then adjust the other side to where our Duna lander is waiting for us. And here we go, just a very slight pulse of the engines. That'll raise our periapsis up just above the Duna lander. It's going to be going essentially faster than us and catching us up in the orbit anyway. And that will do just fine. And then we will have a look at what we can do when we're down here as far as whether we can intercept. We may have to do a fair bit of fancy flying, but that should be straightforward. Now we've got to Duna. And then with a plane change of around 50 meters per second, followed by this burn to bring ourselves into a nice orbit, something like 60 kilometers above the Duna lander. Again, another 150, 160 meters per second. Not terrible considering this stage. We've got plenty left in it. But even with that, I think what we're going to do now is we should be able to switch over to the Duna lander and be able to make the final rendezvous from that end. Here we come. And we're done. Okay. So that's it for Jeb. He's got the craft here. Now we've got to get the others to Jeb. Okay, here we go. So we don't have a maneuver planner yet, which is part of Mech Jeb. Sorry, not maneuver planner, rendezvous planner. It's one of the very late game kind of things that you can actually get. So we're going to have to do this pretty much old school fashion, which is not really a problem. First of all you really want to do is, we're going to be going faster, so we're going to already be catching up with Duna return without much of an issue. So what if we go out to, let's say, this part of the orbit, and we'll just extend the other part upwards just to slow our approach velocity down, or rather, yeah, the speed at which we're catching up to the other vessel. Add a maneuver, and we're going to add a bit of, we've already got the other craft selected. We're going to add a bit of prograde, and you'll see now we have a essentially an intercept position. So that's how far we're going to be ahead, and that's quite a lot. So we can bring that around. You'll see it's not really helping us all that much. We can see whether we can sweep around to get that to be closer. At some points, you'll see we got 2 intercepts. That's not really much of a problem. You'll see we're not really getting all that much closer, and that's fine. Let's just right-click and then just advance the orbit twice. And you'll see after 2 times, we're going to get a much closer intercept. And then we can probably go back to the previous one and then see if we can get a closer intercept yet by just moving this around the orbit. So we're now fairly close. What's the intercept? 50 kilometers. Okay. And let's see if we can tweak this a little bit just to get ourselves even closer still. Can we do that by bringing this around, I wonder? Is that bringing ourselves down? Or it is bringing ourselves down, but not quite enough. And it's going to also throw the other side of our orbit out. So in these circumstances, what you probably want to do is just back it off a little bit. So let's just bring that back to almost nothing, in fact. And then you can slow down the approach by just doing this first intercept. Whoops, I didn't want to actually click on the warp to maneuver bit, but that's not really affected things very much. Yeah, so we'll get ourselves a little bit closer than this orbit just by doing a maneuver. So if we just increase that again until we get, yep, there we go. So we've got an intercept, and that will do fine for the first maneuver. So let's point ourselves at the maneuver, and we'll do that, and I'll see you shortly once that's done. Okay, so here we've got the next maneuver coming up. We're going to do this pretty quickly. It's going to split our encounters. So there's going to be a second intercept right here because our orbit's going to be offset somewhat. So there'll be 2 points at which we cross, which is going to be perfectly fine because the one we're going to be crossing right here has a separation of 500 meters with a relative speed of 40. And we have delta V to slow us down, unlike the getting to this Viking 1. So around we're going to go, and then we'll try to get on target. And here we are. We've got the Duna return ship approaching us, and this is the point at which you forget about Mech Jeb or anything. Point retrograde on, make sure you're on the target mode, and that's going to point us this way. And then we're going to have to decide when to actually burn a little bit. Or they're going to pass us about 500 meters away in about 50 seconds, And we only need 3 seconds of burning, so that is going to be pretty close, I think. So let's just fast forward a little bit. And at this point, it's already maybe worthwhile doing that, but yeah, let's just leave it a little bit more. Okay, and let's bring down our relative speed. There we go, 2.6 meters per second, and we can bring it down to essentially nothing. Okay, now we can point, once we get to time warp 0. Now, essentially, we're going to need to point, why can't I point at it? That's very odd. I can fly it manually to do that, but maybe it's just because my relative speed is just not good enough. So let's just actually point directly at it for a second. And let's just burn. And that will let us establish retrograde again, so we can spin around and get us a great deal closer. So it's going to take a couple of minutes to get there. I wouldn't be tempted to try and rush this. You got a few minutes to get this right anyway. So as we can see, we're heading right for it. And here we are, just 30 meters away, and we're getting a little bit further away. So can we just hold that a little bit? Let's just point towards it again, and just a tiny, tiny touch. Now we're moving a little bit closer. Fair enough. So let's get out with Nielden. And Nielden should be able to just take all the data with him. Take data 5. Yep. And do we have anything else? No, I think we're just going to be fine as is. Turn on our RCS. And let's head over and down. So control to go down. And just like a little elevator down to our rescue craft. Rendezvousing in orbit. Got to remember where the door is. But we can wave hi to Jeb as we approach our rescue craft. The door is going to be on this side. There it is. And we can head on in. Down a little bit. And we can grab and board. Great. So now we just need to switch back again to the other craft. Can I do that with just square brackets now? Yeah, we can. And it's time to abandon ship, really. I don't think there's anything. Can we take anything else with us? We got mystery goo, temperature scan, not much else. Observe mystery goo from here, I guess. We could do that. I think we already have this, but hey, we'll take it anyway. And that's pretty much it. So time to leave this behind, I think. Out we get. Let's. Can we take any data? Crew report, maybe? No, nothing out here that we don't already have. So we will let go of our craft, leave it behind as we take over RCS with Val. And Val can go and join Jeb. They can decide on who takes shifts on being pilots. There we go. Heading over and in. Board. And now we're all on board. And that, unfortunately, is an empty dead craft. But that's not a problem. It can stay here forever around Duna. Now the return trip we can leave for next episode because we're just about up on time, unfortunately. But it's exactly the same approach, except that you're just leaving a different point in your orbit. So if we just head out a little bit, you'll see where we are relative to where our orbit will be. It's a year, 170 days, so it looks like we're going straight towards the sun. We're not. It's just that we're going to be heading that direction when we get to the maneuver node, wherever it is. Well, it's showing it right next to the planet at the moment because we're centric on that, but that's fine. Once we get to that point, we'll essentially be flying sort of down this way, this direction from the planet, and whichever, as long as we're in this orientation, that is. And there is our sort of. Oh, and can we actually get an encounter yet? Is this going to give us an encounter straight away? So let's focus the view on Kerbin. Is there an encounter with that? I don't think there is. No. So we may need a mid-course change just to get that to work. Unless we can just see what the Can I see the closest approach? Can we get an encounter? It's 179 at the moment. If we just increase this a little bit, we probably can. Yeah, let's just change that and let's get an encounter. And there we go. So we can zoom in and we can decide where to actually go and set that up. So if we just bring this in a fair amount, get ourselves inside the orbit of the moon, and then we can, that may not actually be helpful. We want radial. Bring that in a little bit. And yeah, we're not far off from where we need to be there at that point. It's just too sensitive at the moment to be able to get this perfect. So if we get it roughly right, then yeah, this is just going to flatten our orbit out now. And then we can bring it in somewhat. Can we flatten our orbit anymore? Maybe. Yeah, maybe better just to do this in a mid-course rather than do it now. But we will use the first part of it would be from this stage. But because it's 600, let's just see what it would cost us to go from here, add a maneuver to circularize. That will be node 2, will be another 600. So we've got more than enough in our actual main tanks, and we can probably lose this stage even while we're at Duna, just to make it a bit more accurate. So node 2 we'll just delete and go back to node 1, and we'll just bring this in, I think. I don't much mind where it goes at the moment. Let's just finish that off. And there we go. Just by playing with the negative values on normal and radial, and just basically going between those two, you'll bring in the periapsis without altering the angle too much. All right, so we've got a periapsis at 100 kilometers. That's where it'll be once we have that going. If we turn on SAS and point at the maneuver node anyway, it is, you know, a year and 170 days away. So that is, oh, sorry, that's the transfer window itself, but the maneuver node may be slightly different. But let's just add an explicit alarm for this maneuver node. Yeah, it's 5 days afterwards, so that's not really a problem at all. And of course, we've got Viking 2 to position at Duna for future missions. But I think we'll leave it there with our crew successfully rescued, and now they just have to make it back, and it looks like they will. We can of course lose this stage now, and that's one option that we have. Should I do it? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, let's just leave this behind, shall we? Off that goes. That will have shifted our maneuver slightly, but not very much at all. And this will naturally drift away from us while we're waiting that year anyway. So we've got the nice little engine here, the Poodle, which is good interplanetary engine. And we've still got this antenna in case we need it. We don't need it while everyone's on board, though. Well, I guess we could transmit it back. That would get the science earlier, but we wouldn't quite get as much for it. So I think I'll wait for it to get back. I want all that extra science to get at least the nuclear engine, maybe, if not some of the other stuff. So we'll leave it there. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, and share if you've liked this episode, of course. And then we'll see you next time for the triumphant return of our Duna expedition. Thanks for watching.